Part 45. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 441. Shanks rubbed his brow as his head hurt. Then he said with a complex expression, "No, compared to Charlotte Lingling, I think your navy should be more hostile to Orgrim. In terms of threat level, he is higher, right? Look at him, it opened the era of great pirates with my captain. He robbed the prison and rescued the Golden Lion Shiji, broke the legends and myths of your imperial family, and even caused trouble in Marijoya, your world government with several major institutions of the navy. He almost went to Judiciary Island to toss." The warring States Marshal drank tea and nodded with great approval. "You are right, that Orgrim guy is indeed very dangerous. He is crazy and evil, and his threat level is indeed very high. As for hostility, too, I want to kill that guy right now." The warring States Marshal nodded and said. Shanks also nodded. "Yes, that's it. If he does this, why don't you think of a way to kill him quickly?" "But he is too powerful." Marshal Warring States suddenly spoke. Then he said with a serious expression, "I have to admit that he is so powerful that we have nothing to do with him now." Shanks' face twitched slightly. Then the Warring States Marshal continued, "Everything must be done step by step, and the food must be eaten one bite at a time. Don't think that you can take down Orgrim in one breath. It's not that I haven't thought about it. It's not that I haven't tried, but it all failed in the end. Therefore, before targeting Orgrim, we can do something else, Charlotte Lingling." Having said this, Sengoku took a breath and then continued, "Although that guy is not as powerful as Orgrim, he is also one of the 4 emperors of the New World. Shanks, unlike you, my position is the Navy, my identity is the Marshal of the Navy. To me, public is public and private is private. Although I really hope to kill Orgrim immediately, I can't risk the whole Navy with me. On the contrary, Charlotte Special Lingling is also one of the important enemies of our Navy. Isn't it reasonable for me to target her?" Shanks looked at the Naval Marshal Senguo with complicated eyes. "When you say this, I have nothing to say to refute it, because what you say makes so much sense." But at the same time, Shanks also had to secretly admire the power of Sengoku, the new Marshal of the Navy. The fact that Shanks is going to be the king of the Shishibukai should not be considered a very secret news for the major forces on the sea. When I met Orgrim before, the guy didn't look very surprised when he mentioned this, and he even admitted frankly that he had heard about it a long time ago. But before that, Shanks had always felt that the man the Navy wanted to be the king of the Shishibukai was Orgrim. He even thinks that 99% of the people in the sea think so, right? Not to mention, Orgrim himself felt this way. But who would have thought that Sengoku, the naval marshal, was not going for Orgrim at all? In other words, his first target is not Orgrim, his mortal enemy, the guy he hates so much. On the contrary, it was Charlotte Lingling, who was currently the most inconspicuous among the 4 emperors. This was really beyond Shanks' expectations. Orgrim didn't know this, if he could figure it out. Maybe you will find out that the 5 old stars were in the phone bug before and asked him not to think too much about Shanks. Were they really not fooling him into thinking he was a fool? So you are so sincere? Sure enough, the world government is still reliable. Looking at Shanks' complicated eyes, Senguo felt a little proud. I am also a naval marshal after all. Did the title of Wise General Warring States period come for nothing? No matter what thoughts and plans you have, you pirates can clearly guess them, so why should I mess around? However, he did not show this pride. On the contrary, he still seemed very stable. In fact, this is not a show specially created by the Warring States period to surprise people. In fact, this is the conclusion he came to after careful consideration and many discussions with senior generals at the Navy headquarters. Yes, the Navy has held so many meetings regarding the 4 emperors pattern before, and it is not without effect. After all the generals went down, they also did their homework. To some extent, some results have been achieved. The Navy has a fundamental problem, make no mistake about it. That is what the Navy ultimately pursues when it comes to Shanks becoming King Shichibukai, and it is not to kill Orgrim, but to destroy the Four Emperors pattern at the right time. Break the status quo of the New World, change the course of the trend of the times, seek new changes and opportunities for the Navy, and then enter the New World to compete again. Compared with this grand strategy, Orgrim is not so important. The most direct way to destroy the Yonko pattern in the New World is to kill a Yonko. How could the Warring States period not understand this truth? Now among the Four Emperors, Orgrim is one of the best in terms of overall strength. I am afraid that it will not be long before the Whitebeard pirates will be even worse than them. Therefore, it is the most difficult to deal with them, and it is directly the beginning of Hell mode. As for Kaido, although the beast pirates don't seem to be very ferocious, he and Orgrim are allies. If you mess with him, can Orgrim turn a blind eye? So it's very difficult. Whitebeard doesn't need to explain. Maybe he will be suppressed by the Warhammer pirates in the future, but he is still the strongest at the moment. So after thinking about it, it seems that only Charlotte Lingling is a soft persimmon. Just crush her and explode, and the Yonko pattern will explode immediately. The situation in the New World will naturally undergo new changes. But one thing that needs to be noted is that if Shanks really joins forces to do this in the end, Shanks will most likely reach the top. Become the new Yonko. But, first of all, even if Shanks really becomes the Four Emperors, the structure of the New World will inevitably undergo drastic changes. This is the possibility of an opportunity being born. It is much better than Charlotte Lingling continuing to be the Four Emperors and the Navy failing to seize any opportunity. Secondly, the fall of one Yonko and the rise of another Yonko cannot be seamless. There must be drastic changes in the middle, and there will be a fight between dragons and tigers. Not to mention Orgrim and the others, even though silver medal players would probably not miss this opportunity. Therefore, if Shanks wants to rise to the top, he still has to pass this hurdle. How much time it will take him is uncertain. And this uncertainty gives the Navy another opportunity. At the same time, it will also give Orgrim and the others a chance. Perhaps, Orgrim and the others will take the initiative to destroy the Four Emperors pattern before they even wait for the new Four Emperors to appear. Charlotte Lingling has fallen, and Shanks is still preparing to take the throne. In this gap, do you think Kaido and Orgrim will find a way to seize the opportunity to kill Whitebeard? Very likely to be. This may directly trigger a large-scale war within the pirate power, a total war. Melee. No matter what the outcome of this final war is, the overall strength of the pirate camp will inevitably be reshuffled, and depending on the intensity of the war, there will be some losses. From a macro level, isn't this another very beneficial news for the Navy? At the same time, this is an opportunity. The pirate forces in the New World are undergoing a major reshuffle. If the Navy has enough strength, it can still get involved, be a troublemaker, and even start to take root in the New World and carry out strategies. All in all, after various analyses, the Warring States period finally came to the conclusion. Using Shanks as a sharp knife, there is no problem in inserting into the New World, the idea is correct. But if the first blow was to stab Orgrim, it would be too difficult, and the benefits would not be proportional. It is very possible that even if the knife is broken, it will not be able to stab Orgrim to death. On the contrary, if you seize the opportunity and kill Charlotte Lingling, not only will the risk be much smaller, but the difficulty will be much lower. The benefits are also huge. Is this still a choice? He must have killed that damn old woman. Shanks is also a smart man. He was previously confused by the illusion created by the Navy. After all, what the Navy did was as if it was specifically targeting Orgrim. Not to mention, the Warring States period did intend to guide the fishing boat or speculation in this direction. Now, the illusion has been revealed by Sengoku, the naval marshal. After Shanks thought about it for a while, he roughly understood the Navy's thoughts. Looking at it this way, it's not that we can't understand warring states' thoughts. It can even be said that his ideas and strategies are quite powerful. Wise general, Shanks once again became more vigilant towards the warring states period. Isn't this guy too insidious? As for looking for opportunities in the future to join forces to kill Charlotte Lingling, Shanks thinks there is still something to be done. Yes, the meal must be eaten one bite at a time, and the road must be walked step by step. The gap between him and Orgrim was too big, and it was impossible for him to become fat in one go. First think of a way to kill Charlotte Lingling, try to bring her level to the same level as Orgrim, and then think about how to deal with Orgrim. As for the Navy's plan here, Shanks was not clear about it, but he was certain that even if Charlotte Lingling was killed, the Navy would not easily let him take over, and would definitely find a way to hold him back. But this is something that doesn't matter, it's inevitable. At that point, it's up to everyone to do their own thing. The relationship between the two of them is based on cooperation and utilization of each other. Do they really expect to be able to treat each other honestly? You, the warring states period, have your plans for the warring states period, and I, Shanks, also have my own arrangements. Even now, Shanks hasn't figured it out for a while, so he is just one step behind Sengoku. But it doesn't matter. It's not like he has to kill Charlotte Lingling now. He doesn't have the strength. There will be plenty of time to think about it later. Finally, Shanks nodded and said, I have to admire you. Okay, we tentatively set the target on Charlotte Lingling, then, what do you want me to do? You don't need to change anything. You currently have no ability to challenge Charlotte Lingling, so just don't arouse her vigilance. You can still pretend to be the imaginary enemy of Orgrim on the surface. Our Navy can also. I will provide you with cover in other aspects. There is no opportunity now, and our Navy is not powerful enough to intervene in the New World. Let's develop first. When the time is right, I will find a way to see if I can open a hole. As an opportunity, it would be best to kill Charlotte Lingling and the Big Mom pirates in one fell swoop. Let them not react, Sengoku said. Shanks looked at Sengoku, then nodded and said, okay, I will try my best to cooperate with your Navy on these matters. So, I hope we have a pleasant cooperation. Warring States smiled and said. Happy cooperation, Shanks also nodded and said. But I don't know what the two of them were thinking. Anyway, Shanks has raised the level of Sengoku in his mind several times. This naval marshal looks thick-browed, big-eyed, and kind-hearted, but in fact he is full of bad intentions. Don't be wary of him in the future. Maybe I was sold by someone, and I still had to count the money to him. Lao Yinbai. As Beckman said, Shanks is indeed very good, and he is also among the best, but he is still too young. Compared with warring states, he is no match now, and he is controlled by warring states to death. Please give me flowers and monthly tickets, bosses. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 442. He didn't stay in the capital of Seven Waters for too long. After reaching an agreement with Master Tom, Vincent took Tom and prepared to return to the New World. As for Orgrim, he has no intention of going back and is planning to take a trip to the East China Sea. Regarding the safety of Vincent and Master Tom, Orgrim was not worried at all. Although Vincent's strength is not very good, he is more or less the core coder of the Warhammer pirates. If he can't even enter and leave the New World safely, then why should he be a member of the Warhammer pirates? Just because of his reputation, no one in the New World dares to touch him. Orgrim is going to the East China Sea not for other reasons. But he was preparing to meet that guy Darag. This guy had invited him many times before, but Orgrim didn't respond and directly refused to meet him. Because he knew that he was not from the same group as the Revolutionary Army. Compared with his interests, the world government is obviously a more suitable partner. But even though you can't pee in a pot, you can still cooperate in some places. For example, let's create obstacles for the world government together. Just like the world government will create Shanks as the king of the Shichibukai to deal with Orgrim, isn't it reasonable for me to support the revolutionary army, cooperate with them, and target your world government? Fight without defeat, that's what it means. I just happened to come out this time. Let's take a breather and meet Durag. After all, this guy is also a big shot. I have rejected him so many times, so I should give him some face. Durag was also very happy after receiving Orgrim's response. He directly made an appointment with Orgrim to meet in the East China Sea. Orgrim agreed to him because he wanted to go out for a walk and was not too far away. 2 days after Orgrim left the capital of Seven Waters, the news of the world reported extensively on the appointment of red-haired Shanks as the 5th king of the Shichibukai. This incident has caused huge waves all over the world. What kind of organization is King Shichibukai? Before Doflamingo entered, this place was just a trash can. The King Shichibukai inside had no achievements at all and went in to do welfare. And Doflamingo became the king of the Shichibukai, and seized the royal power of Dressrosa, officially becoming the queen of the country that joined the world government. Many people are aware that the King's Shichibukai is likely to rise. No, it didn't take long, and as expected, the King's Shichibukai made a big move. Red-haired Shanks became the 5th King's Shichibukai. Who is Shanks? Even though he seems to have few people around him, he is still very famous. The former Pirate King Roger's crew has dueled with the current world's greatest swordsman, Hawkeye Joracole Mihawk, many times, but so far there has never been a winner. Mihawk's reputation as the #1 swordsman is slightly unstable because of him. And this guy, ever since he formed the red-haired pirates, seems to have never concealed his intention to reach the top, and he still uses Orgrim as his imaginary enemy. And unlike those who clamor to reach the top, Shanks has not easily entered the New World so far. His approach of not entering the New World aroused the contempt of many people. He said that he wanted to kill Orgrim, but you don't even go to the New World. What's the point? But there are still some people who think Shanks is very prudent in doing this. There were many reckless men, but most of them had their heads smashed by Orgrim and the others. Shanks was obviously not a reckless man, he probably had other plans and arrangements. As a result, he became King Shichibukai. Maybe the reputation is simply bad, but smart people can see that Shanks made a good move. He has received new and powerful backup, so after he is ready, it is time to enter the New World and compete with the big guys in Orgrim, right? Now, Shanks' reputation, strength, and status have all been enhanced, and it's about him joining the King's Shichibukai. It also means that, as some people have speculated, the nature of the King's Shichibukai is about to change from a trash can. The King's Shichibukai who will join in the future may not only be used by the Navy to take advantage of them. Even if they are not top-notch in terms of strength, they should be of great help to the world government and the Navy in other aspects. The addition of Shanks and Doflamingo has also changed many people's attitude towards the King's Shichibukai. Faintly, it seems that the waste statement of Wang Xiaokai Wuhei has also dissipated a lot. Of course, the lackeys are still the same lackeys, and this cannot be reversed. After all, they are cooperating with the world government and the Navy. As expected, the news that Shanks was appointed as the 5th king of the Shichibukai has not yet dissipated. The world government, as if striking while the iron is hot, directly invited the 6th king to the Shichibukai. That is Jinbei, who is known as the sea hero. In fact, Jinbei's general popularity on the sea is not very high. Before he joined the Sun Pirates to cause trouble with Tiger, almost no one in the 4 sea areas of East, West, South and North knew who he was. Only those who have been in and out of the first half of the Grand Line and the New World know how powerful this former guard captain of Dragon Palace City is. To put it simply, Jinbei was a private master before, just like Fujitora Isao and others before they became admirals, they were not famous. Only the major forces have a little understanding and attention of them. Now, Jinbei suddenly became the king of the Shishibukai, and his fame suddenly grew. Naturally, the news of the world also translated some of his past actions to popularize knowledge. At this time, the people on the sea realized that there was such a ruthless man on Fishman Island, and he had a good relationship with Orgrim and Whitebeard. Apart from anything else, being favored by these two big guys is enough to prove Jinbei's ability. However, the news also made it very clear that Jinbei joined the king's Shishibukai not because of his outstanding strength, but because the world government intends to improve relations with Fishman Island. It can also be seen from this that the king's Shishibukai is no longer a trash can. Anyone can enter. Even if you are lacking in strength, you must be able to benefit the world government and the navy in other aspects. Unlike Moria and Crocodile, these two guys are of no use at all after joining the king's Shishibukai. Especially Moria and Crocodile are still helping Alabasta fight against pirates. Moria doesn't even dare to leave the Devil's Triangle. Many people feel that the king's Shishibukai roster is not full yet, otherwise the world government might fire this bastard. In fact, this is really the case. In the original story, not long after Ace went to sea, he was invited to join the king's Shishibukai. But the problem was that the Shishibukai, including the last pirate Empress Boya Hancock, was already full at that time. So when Ace comes in, who is he going to take advantage of? That's right, it's Moria, the unlucky child. However, Ace refused this invitation and eventually became Whitebeard's son. However, the world government finally couldn't stand the waste of Moria lowering the level of the king's Shishibukai, and finally sent Doflamingo to deal with Moria during the Battle of the Summit. But I don't know what Doflamingo was thinking, or maybe Moria's ability to save his life was too great, and neither Kaido nor Orgrim killed him. Anyway, he ran away. But the trap of Wang Xiaokai Wilhei was let out. Two big movements in a row made many people realize that after a new marshal took office, the world government and the navy headquarters finally began to make arrangements in this era of the four emperors. No results can be seen now, but when it really starts to show its power, no one can say for sure. In particular, news spread across the sea that the navy headquarters will recruit troops for the second time this year. This is a bit new, because the navy conducts targeted recruitment at the beginning of every year, which is still a common practice. At the beginning of the year, the navy had already recruited troops once, but it is said that the newly appointed Marshal of the Warring States period received an increase in military expenditures from the world government and became rich again. It seems that he is not satisfied with the strength of the navy and wants to continue. Expand the army. Therefore, the second round of recruitment this year has to be launched. However, these are still just news. No one can confirm whether they are true or false. Moreover, the Navy is also very vague about the specific situation and does not know what they are paying attention to. In the Champagne Islands, Rayleigh was reading the newspaper announcing Jinbei's inauguration as king of the Shishibukai in his hand. At the same time, he also placed a newspaper from the previous 2 days in his hand. The news on it was Shanks's. That guy from the Warring States period is really ambitious, King Shishibukai, tisk, it was their navy that suppressed this organization and couldn't lift its head. Now it is their navy that is repurposing this organization. It is said to be a parallel organization, but you can tell who is strong and weak at a glance. Rayleigh smacked his lips and said with some emotion. Boss Yachi was still wiping the cup. After hearing Rayleigh's emotion, she said in a funny way, let's not talk about it for now, Rayleigh. That guy Shanks actually became your Majesty Shishibukai, as his former vice-captain. What do you think of his complicity with the world government? Don't you feel upset? Riley rolled his eyes and said, how else can I see it? Read the newspaper. After complaining about this, Riley smiled again and said, so what can I do? Shanks is a guy who has his own ideas. It is unlucky and lucky that he and Orgrim live in the same era. I think that if Orgrim was not around, maybe he would be able to achieve this goal. Go up to the position of the four emperors. Now Orgrim suppresses him in all directions, and the new world is shrouded by the four emperors. As long as Shanks is unwilling to surrender, he will have to find another way. Being a king's Shishibukai is just a loss of reputation. At least you don't have to bow to a colleague like Orgrim. You can also use the identity and influence behind the king's Shishibukai to open up a new world. I can understand his choice. But understanding is understanding, but Rayleigh is a little worried. But he can't control anything. Shanks is already a captain, and is no longer the trainee crew member of his Roger pirates. As a pirate, he has the right to choose freely, and no one can say anything to him. It seems that this time, it is aimed at Orgrim. Who doesn't know in the sea that Shanks has always wanted to compete with Orgrim to see who can be the best among them in the same period. The last laugh is that it turns out that the world government and the Navy headquarters will not just sit back and watch Orgrim develop smoothly, even if there is a tacit understanding and dirty talk between them secretly. Xiaoqi smiled and said. Rayleigh didn't think much about it, nodded and said yeah, it depends on how Orgrim will respond. He is not someone who will suffer such a loss in silence. Even if he doesn't break up with the world government and the Navy on the surface, he will still have some revenge behind his back, right? Rayleigh knew Orgrim quite well, because Orgrim turned around and went to play with the Revolutionary Army. The game between these big shots is really interesting, he. Xiaoqi couldn't help but smile and said. Rayleigh said with some emotion, it is indeed interesting. Every move can affect the pattern and changes of the entire world. Is there anything more interesting in this world than this? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 443. The New World is the territory of the Whitebeard pirates. Aboard Moby Dick. At this time, Newgate was sitting on his captain's throne, holding a wine bottle in one hand and reading a newspaper in the other. Did that guy Jinbe become King Shishibukai? I originally thought he would join the Warhammer pirates, Marco said with some emotion. After Newgate's battle with Orgrim, his reputation was indeed damaged a lot. But Orgrim didn't beat him, it was a tie, so the title of the strongest is still in his hands, but ironically, there is an extra one after the word most. This made Newgate very unhappy, especially those bastards in the Navy, who also gave Orgrim a bounty exactly like his. It's obvious that I'm disgusting with both of them. However, Newgate did not make any big moves after the Battle of Butter Island. It's just that the Whitebeard pirates and the Big Mom pirates have become a hidden alliance in the New World. Even if both sides don't say anything, they no longer fight against each other. At the same time, they maintained a certain tacit understanding in dealing with the two bastards Orgrim and Kaido. The burden on Jinbei's body is very heavy, but that guy doesn't have to bear these burdens, he's not Neptune. Newgate shook his head and said with some emotion. Indeed, Jinbei has a heavy burden on his body. If it weren't for Fishman Island, he should have a better choice. Whether it was the Whitebeard Sea who joined him in Newgate the pirate group, or join Orgrim's Warhammer pirates. With his relationship with both parties, he can be valued. Isn't this better than being the king of the Shishibukai? As for Ryago Castle, Nip, although Don does not trust the world government and is more willing to cooperate with Orgrim. But as a royal family of the joining country, he has no reason to refuse the olive branch extended by the world government. So after Jinbei expressed his willingness to become the king of the Shishibukai, although Neptune felt a little sorry for Jinbei, as the king of Fishman Island, he still chose to acquiesce to Jinbei's approach. La, not to mention Jinbei, for us, it is better for him to join the Shishibukai than to join the Warhammer pirates and hang out with that bastard Orgrim. Newgate said with a laugh. This is true. Marco also nodded and said. But this Shanks, the kid on Roger's ship, is now starting to show off. Why do I always feel that there is something familiar about him? Newgate smiled and said. Familiar feeling, Marco murmured, and then he seemed to have thought of something and said, Dad, maybe it's because of Orgrim. Look, they look so alike. Picture, Newgate raised his eyebrows slightly, feeling a little strange, but after thinking about it along Marco's train of thought, it seems that this is really the case. Indeed, they are very similar. Is this how the familiarity comes about? Newgate grinned and said with a smile. Before Orgrim entered the New World, didn't he have the same intention as Shanks to reach the top from the beginning? It's just that the path is different. Orgrim finally chose to join the Bastard Sky's banner during that period. And Shanks just replaced Sky with the world government. They were all taking advantage of the situation to enter the new era. World. At the same time, they are also waiting for a change. Orgrim waited until the situation changed, Roger became king, and was pulled out by the navy and executed. Marineford was looking for death. Therefore, Orgrim took advantage of this change to successfully enter the New World and became one of the 4 great pirate groups. Finally, step by step, he reached the position of the Yonko, and with him Newgate they are all on an equal footing. And now, Shanks is the same. He has joined the 7 warlords, just like when Orgrim joined Shiji. The nature is similar. They are all looking for an opportunity to change the situation. However, Shanks, the change we have to wait for may come from Orgrim. And what Shanks wants is just like Orgrim wanted to be on an equal footing with him, he wants to be equal to Orgrim, or even better. Let that bastard Orgrim have a headache with this kind of thing, Kulala La Newgate laughed. After thinking about it, he suddenly had some expectations. I hope Shanks can shine in the New World, and it is best to make that bastard Orgrim lose his face. Of course, the premise is don't Shanks affect his Whitebeard pirates, otherwise Newgate would be happy to join forces with Orgrim to kill Shanks. The interests of the 4 emperors are also common to some extent. In the first half of the Grand Line, in the port of the Deep Sea Prison, Impel Down, and Impelton. At this time, Jinbei, the new king, came to the Shishibusi. He and the world government did not negotiate any excessive demands. On the contrary, a request was made to pardon Fisher Tiger's crimes, but the world government did not agree, and Tiger is no longer a member of the Sun Pirates. Jinbei knew that Tiger was taken away by the Revolutionary Army. When he finally contacted him, he told him not to worry about himself anymore. Jinbei knew that he and Tiger's brother had parted ways again. But Tiger's regret, Jinbei still had to complete it for him. That was to rescue A. As a dragon, Jinbei had no conflict with Eren in this time and space. On the contrary, the relationship between the two was very good. He was naturally willing to rescue Eren. Therefore, he made a request for amnesty for Eren. Let the world government release this guy Eren from Impelton. The world government wants it all. Eren is just a little guy. It's useless if you hold him in your hands. He will even become their partner with the Warhammer pirates. A small hidden danger in the problem between them. After all, Orgrim is now taking a no questions asked attitude. That is because they are still getting along with each other. If one day the situation changes and they no longer get along, Eren maybe it can play some role. When the time comes, the bastard will inevitably talk about these issues. So it is of little use and very troublesome to keep him in his hands. Now that Jinbei has spoken, of course our world government is willing to let him go. Therefore, Eren was given an amnesty as an associate of King Shishibukai because of Jinbei's request. At this time, Jinbei came to pick Eren up from prison. It seemed that he had already changed clothes inside. At this time, Eren Long did not wear the black and white prison suit, but instead put on his original somewhat fancy beach suit. The shackles on his body were also removed, and he did not seem to have any injuries. It seemed that apart from the procedural injuries he suffered before being imprisoned, tortured, Aaron didn't suffer any loss in it. It was just that his originally very strong figure looked a little thin. The arrival of the Kibbutz under the king naturally required Magellan to personally come forward. At this time, he had changed from his original deputy. The director has become the real director of the prison. It seems that the Orgrim prison robbery did not have a greater adverse impact on him. After all, Admiral Zifa was in place at the time. No, can he stop anything? He is a small deputy warden. He can fight to the point of almost dying here. He has already fulfilled his duties. I really hope I won't see you again in the future. Magellan looked at Jinbei and Aaron with a very stiff face and said. Aaron snorted coldly and did not reject Magellan at all. Jinbei had nothing to say to him. After all, Tiger Boss almost died in Magellan's hands not long ago. After a casual meeting, Jinbei and Aaron got on the boat and left. After leaving the Gate of Justice and leaving the control area of the three fortresses of justice, Aaron looked at Jinbei with a complicated expression. Jinbei was also confused. Looks like he doesn't know what to say. You became the king of the seven warlords, Aaron finally spoke. Jinbei nodded helplessly and said, yes, if you want to say something disgusting, just say it quickly. Of course I want to scold you a few words. If you do something bad, you must be a lackey for the world government and those bastard navy, Aaron said angrily. But soon, he fell silent again and said, but I know that this must be your helpless choice, and it is only because of your blessing that I can get out of that damn Impelton. Maybe others are qualified to say something about you, but I'm the only one who doesn't. Anyway, thank you very much. When Jinbei heard Aaron's words, the original embarrassment on his face dissipated. It seems that this guy can still understand me. As long as you understand, Jinbei said with a smile. Tiger Boss, how is he? I heard that he came to jail not long ago and wanted to save me. Aaron asked with some worry in his heart. Don't worry, this happened, but Boss Tiger did not suffer. Although the operation to save you failed, he was rescued by the Revolutionary Army. However, he also said that we should stop meddling in his affairs, because what he wants to do is too dangerous, and we can no longer have anything to do with Fishman Island, otherwise it will be harmful to Fishman Island. Jinbei shook his head and said. So that's it, did he join the Revolutionary Army? Aaron said with some emotion. If Tiger becomes a pirate, Aaron can follow him without saying a word, but as for the Revolutionary Army, forget it. I guess he is also influenced by Avalon. Anyway, Aaron Long has no idea about becoming a Revolutionary Army. He has done his best, and no one can say anything. He almost paid back the kindness he owed Tiger with his life this time, which is enough. There is no definite news, but I think it is still very possible. Jinbei nodded and said. Aaron smiled helplessly and asked, so, you are the leader of the Sun Pirates now? Ha 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 ha, this is true. What about you? Do you want to consider? Jinbei asked. Aaron knew that Jinbei wanted him to come back, but Aaron still waved his hands regretfully and said, if there were no King Shichibukai, I would definitely continue to work with you, but now, forget it, just think I owe you once. If you need anything in the future, just say hello. Although I can understand you, I don't want to go to the world government, work. Jinbei also nodded in understanding, without forcing anything. In fact, the big boss Orgrim also cooperates with the world government, and Doflamingo also joined the seven seas of the king. These can all be used to convince Aaron. But what kind of person is Orgrim? What level of person are you? Can the reason and significance of Doflamingo's joining the Shichibukai be the same as his own? In other words, as long as Orgrim doesn't fall, the Navy will never think of sitting on Doflamingo's head and shit. So Jinbei didn't use these high-sounding words as a reason to convince Aaron, because Aaron must have understood it in his heart. So what do you do? Back to Avalon? Jinbei asked. Aaron smiled bitterly and said, "Do I still have a chance to return to Avalon? Even if there was, why would you have the nerve to go back? You ran out with all your heart, and then you became such a mess. Why do you want to go back? Being caught by the Navy, I completely ruined my reputation as a brave warrior. Forget it, I'll try my best to find a way out on my own. If I achieve something in the future, I might be able to be shameless enough to go back and beg my eldest sister to arrange a way out for me or something." "Ha ha ha ha, why do I feel like I'm luckier compared to you?" Jinbei couldn't help laughing. "Of course you are much luckier than me. Mr. Zui has invited you. If it were me, I would have agreed a long time ago." "I really don't know what you think," Aaron said with some envy. "Okay, stop saying these useless words. I have become the king of the Shishibukai now, and there is no way I can join the Warhammer pirates. Ugh, in short, don't talk about whether you owe me or not. If it hadn't been for you, Boss Tiger and I might not have been able to escape from that poor Salino alive. Anyway, it's the same. If you need help, just ask," Jinbei said with a smile. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 444. 2 months later, East China Sea. A pirate ship is sailing here, and the flag they hang is a bit funny. It's a skull, but that skull has a big red nose. That's right, this pirate group is none other than Uncle Bucky's pirate group. This man has domineering luck. After the Rogue Town incident, Bucky parted ways with Shanks, and he never left the East China Sea again. He has been amusing himself in the sea area and is a happy little pirate. Because of his low profile and cunning, he was able to live a peaceful life in the fish pond of the East China Sea. In short, he lived a pretty good life. Hey, that bastard Shanks actually became the king of the Shishibukai. He is really an embarrassment to us Roger pirates. Bucky looked at the newspaper in his hand and thought to himself. He didn't say anything because he was keeping this identity secret even from his subordinates. The newspaper at this time was not about Shanks' inauguration as king of the Shishibukai. That was more than 2 months ago. Instead, it shows that Shanks, as the king of the Shishibukai, defeated a big pirate who was about to enter the New World and killed this year's supernova. The world government said in the newspaper that Shanks was fulfilling his duties as King Shishibukai. But in fact, Shanks just met this group of pirates by chance. Originally, he had no interest in these guys at all. But no matter what, those pirates always want to provoke him, saying that he is a lackey of the world government and the Navy. The bounty is estimated to be over 100 million, which is too inflated. So Shanks had no choice but to help the Navy headquarters deal with them. This could be regarded as his first achievement as the king of the Shishibukai. Anyway, the facts are here. Perhaps in order to bind Shanks, the Navy and the world government took this matter out and talked about it in the newspapers. Bucky, on the other hand, was complaining about the news. Of course, he said this, but why was there a sense of envy in his eyes? Compared with Shanks, Bucky is obviously a more unscrupulous person. Don't look at him complaining about Shanks or anything like that, but in fact, in the original story, he also joined the King's Shishibukai. Shanks is doing it for his own ambition, to be able to enter the New World or something. As for Bucky, he just wants to be a bastard. He can be much safer wearing the coat of the King Shishibukai. Cursing, Bucky threw away the newspaper in his hand, then picked up the bottle next to him and drank. Did you hear that? The captain, that Hosgarot Orgrim, seems to have come to the East China Sea. There was information about his sightings 2 days ago. A pirate boy followed Bucky and asked. Bucky's expression changed slightly, as if he recalled how terrifying Orgrim was. Back on the empty island, if he hadn't run away, quick. But when I think about this, I feel heartbroken. The Roger pirates originally had a share of the gold on the Sky Island, but because of the arrival of Orgrim and the others, they didn't get anything. I almost died on it. What are you afraid of? I have been friends with that guy for a long time, and nothing will happen to him. As long as we don't provoke him, it will be fine. The East China Sea is so big, how can we just meet him casually, Bucky said pretentiously. Old friend, the pirate boys are all confused. You have been wandering around the East China Sea. When did you have friendship with such a big shot? Just listen to what I say, why is there so much nonsense? Do you want to die? Bucky said angrily. Do I have to tell you about the Tathagata palm that I have learned? But he has a farcical relationship with Orgrim. When Orgrim was the boss, he was still an intern. However, at this moment, the originally calm sea suddenly changed. Then, a group of strong fishmen shot out of the sea like sharp arrows and landed on Bucky's boat. Bucky was completely stunned. The fishmen tribe? Are you mistaken? This is the East China Sea, okay. The leader is holding a jagged machete in his hand. He has blue skin and looks very strong, with murderous intent rolling around him. No, yes, it was Aaron who came here. More than 2 months ago, he came out of that ghost place in Impelton because Jinbei's King Shishibukai was pardoned. But he didn't have the nerve to go back to Avalon, and he didn't want to. He continued to stay in the Sun Pirates. So he gathered a group of his younger brothers, such as Xiao Haki and others, and these Murlocs came to the East China Sea together. When he came to the East China Sea, he actually didn't have any extra thoughts, he just felt that he had nowhere to go. Let's find a place to stay and think about the future path. Because he is a fishman, there is no need to walk through the upside-down mountain to leave the Grand Line and go to the Four Seas. He directly led the people through the windless zone. Anyway, he is not afraid of those Neptunes. After all, Aaron is much stronger than the original story. And even if he can't defeat the Neptunes, can he still run away? He is not a human. The sea is also his home field. In short, the group of them arrived at the East China Sea quickly, a few days faster than Orgrim. It's not that Orgrim can't cross the windless zone, mainly because Orgrim is more wanting to wander around, he wandered along the way. Otherwise, based on the information of the Bucky pirates, would we know that he came to the East China Sea? It's because Orgrim didn't cover up anything. What are you going to do? Bucky took out his dagger forcefully, looked at Aaron and the others and said. As a person who has been in and out of the Grand Line, he and Captain Roger have fought against big guys like Whitebeard and Golden Lion. How could I, Uncle Bucky, be frightened by some Murlocs? Huh. Wait, why does this Murloc look familiar? Isn't this Aaron? Although in the eyes of Orgrim and others, Aaron is a small role. But don't forget, he also made a splash on Butter Island, and was even offered a bounty of 170 million Baileys. And his name is also very simple and straightforward: first arrival warrior Aaron. How much is Bucky worth? Until now, the bounty of 12 million Baileys is not even enough for his most glorious reward of 15 million Baileys. Put it in front of Aaron, not even a fraction of him. What's more, as someone who has also been in the New World and also with the Warhammer Pirates, Aaron is no worse than Bucky. Don't look at it, Aaron doesn't seem to have entered the Warhammer Pirates system, but Bucky is just an intern. Once Aaron's identity was recognized, Bucky felt a little nervous. Escape? But how to escape? I met the fishmen, how could I outrun them in this sea? I am also a devil fruit user. Damn Shanks, if it weren't for that bastard. Aaron also put away the killing intent in his eyes at this time, and asked a little strangely, don't get me wrong, originally we really wanted to grab a boat, but it sounds like you have a relationship with Mr. Chui. Aaron, they had just arrived in the East China Sea not long ago, and apart from the travel expenses given by a few fishermen brothers and Jinbei, they had nothing to ask for. They just planned to hijack Bucky's boat and use it as their own boat. As for why it was Bucky, I can only say that he was unlucky and happened to bump into him. But his domineering luck seemed to come into play at this time. Just when Aaron was about to take action, he boasted about it with his younger brother, and also involved Orgrim. Although Aaron thought Bucky, a little pirate from the East China Sea, was talking nonsense, how could anyone be able to have a relationship with Master Chui? But I have to ask, if it is really a small person who has friendship with Mr. Hammer, then he accidentally kills someone, will he want to return to Avalon in the future? Do you still want to be a pirate? As someone who has been around Avalon for several years, Aaron also knows that his boss usually has a good temper. When he is happy, the baggage carriers at the port will go up and chat with him. Although it's highly unlikely, maybe this guy carried a bag in Avalon? Bucky was frightened at this moment. When he heard Aaron's words, he quickly said, "There are some, it all happened many years ago." "Do you really have one?" Aaron was stunned for a moment, and then said with a stern look on his face, "If you dare to lie to me, I won't even know how you will die." "Am I still trying to lie?" "Who dares to use that uncle's name to deceive?" Bucky quickly explained. He thought to himself, "I am really not lying. I have really met Orgrim face to face. You may not believe it, but he is still an opponent." Aaron thought the same. On this sea, there are probably not many people who would dare to use the name of Mr. Hammer to deceive, right? After all, the Warhammer pirates will not let such a person go. They will definitely kill each one they find, and the Navy will not let such a person go. They will definitely. The investigation was clear. So he put away the machete and said, "In that case, we don't need to shout to kill." "Did you just say that Lord Chui came to the East China Sea? Real or fake?" Bucky glanced at the talkative boy with some annoyance, and then gestured. "What I'm asking you, is it true or false? That little brother has never seen the fishmen at all. The reputation of the fishmen in the sea is also very bad, saying that they are extremely evil and cruel. What a pity, I am just a little pirate, how can I afford to offend this kind of race?" Therefore, he did not dare to hide anything and quickly said, "It should be true, right? It is said that Lord Orgrim is in the East China Sea. Many people have seen him. It seems that he is not very far from us. What about the sea area ahead?" Bucky was so angry when he heard what he said. "You really said everything?" Sure enough, Aaron's eyes lit up when he heard that Master Chui was probably nearby, and he said, "Okay, that's just right. You can take us to see Master Chui. You have friendship with our Master Chui anyway, right?" Bucky was almost crying at this time. He really wanted to die. Friendship, what a fucking friendship. Whether Orgrim can remember this little person is a question. But at this moment, Aaron looked like he was coming with bad intentions and he would kill anyone if you dared to refuse. Bucky really didn't dare to refuse. So I could only smile and nod, and said, "Okay, I was just thinking about going to visit that big shot. We just happened to be on the way." Aaron nodded and agreed. In fact, his idea was very simple. He was too embarrassed to go to Avalon, but if he could meet Master Hammer outside, he would definitely pay him a visit. Maybe Mr. Zui needs his help to run an errand or something, so what kind of tasks should be assigned to him? By then, wouldn't he have seized the opportunity? What if I could legitimately return to Avalon? As for whether Mr. Chui remembers him, Aaron thinks he should still remember him. I have talked to him no matter what, and I once served as the guard captain of the Warhammer Pirates station in Avalon. Not to mention, he also has the reputation of being the first warrior of the First Legion of Avalon. Even if you can't catch Mr. Chui's eyes, you should still have some impression. In this way, Aaron forced the very helpless Bucky to take them to find Orgrim. At this time, Orgrim happened to be not far from the sea area. Cocoa West Village. It is the hometown of the orange girl Nami. This guy came here with the idea of coming here to see if Nami and others were affected by him and disappeared. It turns out, not really. His influence is not that great yet. As for why he didn't go see Luffy or Ace or something, how could he have such leisure? After Nami grew up, she became a great beauty, and now she is also a cute little loli. It is reasonable and pleasing to see. Luffy and Ace, forget it, I have undressed at home, I don't even bother to see him, and yet I'm here to see you. What's more, although Luffy will become the protagonist of the era in the future, he may not be able to take off with his presence, and Orgrim has no intention of licking him. As long as he dares to offend him, he will definitely be beaten without any hesitation. In addition, this kid is Garp's grandson. If he really gets involved with him, Garp will definitely think too much about it. If Luffy really becomes a pirate or something in the future, just watch. Can't Garp put the blame on him? Orgrim, why should I take the blame for Shanks? A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 445. At this time, in Kokoyasi village, in front of Orgrim, there were two little Lolita. They all look very cute, and they look like they are about 5 or 6 years old. One has orange hair and the other has blue hair. They are two sisters, but they are not identical sisters and have no blood relationship. This is Nami and Nakajeo. They are both war orphans. They were adopted by Belmere, a retired female Navy soldier. They came to Koko West Village and lived here since childhood. At this time, the two little Lolita stared at Orgrim with big watery eyes. Too tall, they have never seen anyone so tall. He must be as tall as Belmere, right? And this man is so strong, with strong muscles, and a very domineering-looking war hammer on his back. Although he has a smile on his face, there is always an aura about him that makes people feel a little scared. Who are you? Nakajeo protected Nami behind him and asked Orgrim as his sister. Orgrim did not answer, but raised his gaze and looked at the person standing in front of the two of them. Woman. This woman is pretty, but not particularly outstanding. She looks about 30 years old. Her hair color is burgundy, but the hairstyle is a bit strange, and both sides are shaved. Instead, her hair was grown long in the middle and tied into a ponytail. Her face was very serious, and she obviously recognized Orgrim, but there was no fear in her eyes. She had a cigarette in her mouth and a handful in her hand. If you look closely at the Changtong musket, you can still see the Navy number on it, but it is a bit old. Yes, the woman standing in front of Orgrim is Belmere, a female soldier who retired from the Navy. More than 5 years ago, a small war broke out in the East China Sea, which did not involve pirates or anything. But the Navy still participated in the war, and Belmar was one of the naval soldiers. On that cruel battlefield, she realized that the Navy was not pure justice. So after that, she chose to retire and adopted Nakajeo and Nami, whom she picked up from the battlefield. However, although she no longer works in the Navy, she still has a passion for pirates. There's nothing to like about it. Especially pirates like Orgrim, who are famous for being evil and crazy. He started the era of great pirates and killed an unknown number of people. Looking at this man who still has a military aura on his body, woman, Orgrim smiled and said, "There's no need to draw a gun and fight, right? You know, this is no joke, if you shoot me, but be prepared to piss me off." Orgrim has a good temper for ordinary people. He can talk and laugh with them without any airs. But if he draws a gun and confronts him, it has a different meaning. Although ordinary guns are not good for him. No threat. Hosgarot Orgrim, why are you here? You are not welcome here, Belmere said in a neither humble nor condescending manner. But it seemed that Orgrim's words still had some effect on her. She no longer pointed her gun at Orgrim, but she still held it tightly in her hand, not daring to relax at all. Because the man in front of me is one of the top pirates in the world. There are countless people who have died directly or indirectly at his hands, right? The Navy headquarters, which claims to be just, has nothing to do with him. It's surprising that she, a little retired female Navy soldier, can't be nervous. Orgrim smiled and said, "Don't be so nervous. As long as you don't shoot me, I'm still a very kind person. I don't have any ill intentions when I come here. To be honest, this small village of yours doesn't interest me. Having said all this, it still cannot change your identity. You are the most evil pirate in the world. Maybe there are no treasures worth your attention here, but you can still destroy this village casually," Belmire said in a deep voice. Orgrim was stunned for a moment. What the hell? Is this my reputation in the eyes of the general public? Although I, Orgrim, am indeed not a good person, when have I ever destroyed an island or a town casually? Are you coming? It seems there is, right? But even if there is, it must have been at least several years ago. Over the years, I have cultivated my character and become a cultural person. Gee ha 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 ha, maybe, so if you don't want to anger me and let me destroy this village, you shouldn't treat me like this. Orgrim said with a smile. So what exactly do you want to do? Belmire asked. Orgrim didn't care about her tone. This is the privilege of the weak. As a strong man, he was willing to give her this privilege. Orgrim stepped towards the mother and daughter. After taking a few steps closer, Belmole's eyes flashed with panic, and he couldn't help but take Najajeo and Nami back 2 steps. But Orgrim still closed the distance with the 3 of them. Seeing that you have taken care of this little girl for several years, I can be more tolerant to you. To be honest, I am here for this little girl, Orgrim said while pointing at the little Lolita Nami. At this time, Nami looked confused, with a strong question mark in her cute big eyes. Come for me? But I don't know you at all. Belmire also had a very serious expression and said, I will not give Nami to you, and I want to take her away unless you step on my body. Gee ha 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 ha, I told you, I don't mean any harm, this little girl, I don't plan to take her away by force. Speaking of which, her parents, forget it, let's not mention these anymore. In short, she has some relationship with me, and I can be considered her elder. Orgrim laughed and said. Belmire was stunned. What's going on? How can an orphan I picked up on the battlefield be related to a big shot like you, Orgrim? If not, she felt that with Orgrim's identity and strength, there was no need to lie to her here. Belmire would not believe a word of it. But in fact, Orgrim was really talking nonsense. He was completely different from May's parents, have no relationship and don't even know who they are. This is just an excuse and a reason. And he found Nami, on the one hand, to see how cute this little loli was when she was a child. She is really cute, so cute that she is no worse than Robin back then, and Orgrim really wants to take her away. On the other hand, poor parents in the world, he came here to poach someone and give him his son Andrest. Andrest is doing very well now, and my hawk has been teaching him the way of the sword. In the future, if nothing unexpected happens, he will definitely be able to become a talented person. And Orgrim is also ready to train the son well, and when the time is right, he will let him go to sea to make a living. After all, if you don't go out to sea and live under the protection of your own wings, can you become a true hero? And since he wants to go to sea, as his own son, it is impossible for him to become a navy, right? He must also take the path of being a pirate. In this way, as a parent, although Orgrim doesn't seem to care much about Andrest, secretly, he still values him very much. Prepare to pave the way for him and find some reliable friends. First of all, he was eyeing Nami. Nami's sailing talent was obvious to all. She was definitely one of the best in the world, and Shiji was moved by it. And what is the most important thing when you go out? There is just a reliable navigator. Orgrim suffered such losses back then. It was not until Vincent joined the team that he assumed various duties as a shipwright and navigator as a helmsman. Only then did Orgrim get around the situation and get lost at sea and encounter dangers. Situation. Planting a seed now, Nami and Andrest happen to be about the same age. When both of them can grow up to go to sea, wouldn't they pick up a top navigator for nothing? She is also a great beauty. Of course, there is also Orgrim's bad taste in it. Aren't you, Luffy, the protagonist of the era, the Destiny Child? I will poach Nami directly for you, just because of your ability. I want to see what you can do to get out of the East China Sea, out of the Great Sea Route, and into the New World. Maybe this guy capsized halfway and was killed by the weather and the changeable sea surface. That's fine, everyone can worry less. Benefiting ourselves at the expense of others, isn't this what we pirates should do? But Orgrim can't just come over and snatch Nami away for no reason at all. That's not good. Shiji and Eren have both studied and done this. But in the end, everything capsized. Orgrim was not afraid of capsizing, but he felt that doing so would not allow Nami to truly become his own. Therefore, this kind of thing cannot be forced, and something must be changed subtly. So he needed an excuse to interfere with Nami's affairs, so he thought of Nami's life experience. She was an orphan. In the name of her parents' friend, it might be a good choice. Of course, there is also a sense of deception in this, but as a pirate, Orgrim has no moral integrity. At the same time, he may be a little selfish, but he believes that as long as he does not cheat Nami and sincerely arranges for her, okay, that's not too much. As for tricking her into becoming one of my own, no matter how you look at it, it's not worse than joining the Straw Hat Pirates in the future. This is a good thing. Of course, this is just an excuse. When Nami grows up, if she really asks him, he will tell her the truth. Looking at Belmir's surprised expression, Nami's surprised gaze, Orgrim spoke directly again. So, if I want to take her away in this gentle way, may I? Belmir thought hard, but she couldn't think of any reason for a big man like Orgrim to deceive her. So although it was hard to accept it, she believed Orgrim's words. But she still shook her head. Said no matter how Nami's parents are, I am Nami's mother now, and I will not watch her become your evil minion. Orgrim frowned slightly, looking a little impatient. I am such a big shot, if I hadn't taken Nami's mood into consideration, would I have talked so much nonsense to you? Your head is gone, you know. So he looked at Nami and asked, are you willing to come with me? Nami shook her head without hesitation, hugged Belmir's leg, and said, I don't want to leave Belmir. You. Belmir smiled with some relief. After all, I didn't raise you, little girl, in vain. You heard it too. Even if you have something to do with Nami's parents, she is not willing to leave you now. Have you given up on this? Belmir said confidently to Orgrim. Orgrim rubbed the corners of his eyes helplessly, and finally said, okay, I told you, I won't force anything. Since Nami doesn't, if you are willing, forget it. However, as an elder, I should stay here for a few days to see how she is living. Shouldn't it be a problem? Belmir wanted to chase them away, but she also knew that Orgrim was obviously not very patient with her anymore. Now that Nami is here, he doesn't seem to be very irritable. But if he is provoked again, he will really. What should I do if I go crazy and kill everyone? So after hesitating for a while, Belmir gritted his teeth and nodded. Okay, but you have to promise not to do anything detrimental to Kokoyashi village. Your reputation as Hosgarot Orgrim is among the best in the world. You shouldn't deceive us orphans and widows, right? Orgrim grinned and said, yes, I can even pay to live there. Orgrim's idea is also very simple. Anyway, he made an appointment with Durag to meet in the East China Sea, but the specific time has not been determined. It doesn't matter if he delays for a while, just stay here for a few days. Maybe, we can get in touch. Can change the mind of little girl Nami. Even if it can't be changed, it can bury the seed deeper, and there will still be more opportunities in the future. He is very patient. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 446. It's already noon, and the sun is high in the sky. Orgrim woke up in a daze. You may not believe it when I tell you that he is the majestic king of the night, the pirate emperor of the New World, the boss with a bounty of 3.743 billion Baileys, and the great pirate who stomps his feet and makes the whole world tremble. Actually, in the shabby little town of Donghai, I stayed in the home of a former female Navy soldier. Sleep on the floor. That's right, sleep on the floor. It's not that Belmere was so bold as to give Orgrim such an arrangement. The main reason is that there is no bed in her house that Orgrim can sleep on. Orgrim is more than 3 meters tall, and the bed is too big for him to sleep on. Alas, I might as well sleep on the floor. This room was originally supposed to be a guest room, but Orgrim threw the broken bed that was unfit for sleep and occupied space in the corner of the yard outside. In the past few days, he has just laid the floor here. In fact, apart from having to lay the floor, there is nothing wrong with me. Although Orgrim's life in Avalon can be called extremely luxurious, his food and drink expenses are almost among the best in the world. But in essence, he was born with a mud-legged background, so his requirements for the quality of life are not so pretentious. He can eat top-notch ingredients, but he still enjoys ordinary meals. The Belmer family is actually in a very difficult situation. Even though they have an orange manor, they don't seem to be making much money. Originally, I couldn't afford to feed a guy like Orgrim who could eat a cow in one meal, but fortunately Orgrim would give me money. This was beyond Belmere's expectation. At first, she thought Orgrim was just talking casually. After washing, Orgrim walked out of the bathroom and came to the living room. There was no one else in this house except him. After being here for a few days, Orgrim also had a little idea of the daily routines of Nami, mother and daughter. When it was just dawn, mother and daughter had already gotten up and went to the orange garden to take care of oranges. After all, the family of 3 depends on the manor for food, so there is no room for any slack. Sitting on the sofa, Orgrim made himself a cup of tea, stretched a little, and yawned again before he felt that he had really gotten up. Counting the time, it's time for that woman to come back and cook, right? Orgrim said to himself while drinking tea. As expected, not long after he finished speaking, Belmer walked into the yard with a hoe on his shoulder and some mud stains on his body. Behind her, there were 2 little Lolita, Nami and Nakajeo. These 2 little Lolita also looked like they were working in the fields. There were some dirt spots on their fair and tender little faces. However, the mother and daughter did not seem to feel tired. They walked together with smiles on their faces. Until they saw Orgrim. The current only man in the family, like an old man, was slumped on the sofa, holding a teacup in his hand, looking like he was doing nothing. The moment he saw Orgrim, the smile on Belmere's face faded. But she didn't show any shame to Orgrim. To be honest, the contact over the past few days has made Belmere's impression of Orgrim change a lot. Before actually coming into contact with Orgrim, in Belmere's impression, Orgrim was a very evil, crazy, and cruel pirate. Maybe if he doesn't kill a few people every day, he won't feel comfortable if he smashes anyone's head with that war hammer, right? Therefore, when Orgrim first moved in, Belmere couldn't sleep at night, for fear that Orgrim would go crazy. And she is a woman after all, Orgrim is a pirate, and he will be afraid of Orgrim doing something rude. It didn't. Orgrim ate and slept every day. After sleeping, he ate, basked in the sun, and was in a daze. When he was cooking or cleaning the house, he would even tell stories to Nami and Nakajeo. In short, if you are not really sure, his face is that of the big pirate on the reward order. Belmere even wanted to doubt Orgrim's identity. Is this your daily life as a pirate? So now, although Belmir is unwilling to show a smile to Orgrim, he no longer has the initial fear of him. You woke up very early today, don't you need us to prepare the food and then call you? After Belmir entered the door, he couldn't help but complain about Orgrim. Orgrim took a sip of tea, with a smile on his face, and said a free pirate must have freedom. I can get up whenever I want. It's really free. Your freedom is based on the suffering of ordinary people like us. If it weren't for, Belmir seemed to want to preach something, but realized Orgrim's identity and couldn't help but shut his mouth. Then she put the hoe in her hand aside, washed up, and prepared to cook for a few people. Nami and Nakajeo, these two little Lolita, seemed to be fearless. In other words, they didn't have a particularly clear understanding of Orgrim in the first place. They were just strangers to him before, but now that they have lived there for a few days and are familiar with him, they are not afraid of him at all. Even though there were mud spots on their bodies and faces, Nami and Nakajeo didn't care about it. Like two active naughty children, they ran to Orgrim's side in minutes. Nakajeo sat directly on Orgrim's lap, and Nami was even more daring, following Orgrim's arm and climbed onto his shoulder. It's a shame Andrest isn't here. If he were here, he would probably cry. My biological son has never sat on my father's shoulders. Holding Orgrim's head, Nami kicked her two little feet in front of Orgrim's chest. She grabbed Orgrim's hair and said, Orgrim, hurry up, you haven't done it yet. Finish telling last night's story. What happened in the end? Did you win? That admiral. Nakajeo opened his eyes wide, sat on Orgrim's lap, raised his head, and used his head holding Orgrim's belly. He said with great anticipation, come on, tell me, I didn't sleep well last night because I was thinking about this matter. Orgrim seemed to be very patient with these two little Lolita. He reached out and grabbed Nami's two little feet, stabilizing her naughty figure to prevent her from falling off. Then, he laughed and said, gee ha 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 ha, of course I didn't win. The me at that time was not the me now. At that time, I had been at sea for less than a year. How could I be an admiral? My opponent, the Warring States period man, beat me all over in a few blows, and it was a conspiracy against us. The Navy was well prepared, and we couldn't escape at all. When I was seriously injured, I was a little desperate. Orgrim smiled and told the two little Lolita his story, which was the story of when he first set foot on the Shampoo Islands. The embarrassing incident of being pinned to the ground and hammered by Sci-fi during the Warring States period. Maybe it's because they were brought into Orgrim's position and role. In short, these two little Lolita expressions would be very solemn when they heard that Orgrim and his friends were seriously injured and unable to survive. Seemed extremely worried. But when they heard the story that a big pirate came to rescue them, stopped the Navy, and Orgrim and others escaped, they were so happy that they all looked relieved. This actually made Orgrim feel a little funny. These two little guys are so cute. When Orgrim finished telling the story to the two little Lolita, Belmir also made a meal. They then served it together. After it was served, Orgrim noticed something was wrong. The food in front of him was relatively rich, including meat, juice and so on. But in front of Nami, Nakajeo, and Belmir, the food seemed to be very light, with only some vegetarian dishes and a soup without oil or water. Therefore, Nami and Nakajeo looked at the food in front of Orgrim with very envious eyes. Orgrim stretched out his hand and scratched his head, looked at Belmir with some doubts and said, what's going on? Wasn't it the same situation 2 days ago? Is it good? Belmir's face twitched slightly and he said, we are very poor and can't afford to eat like you do every day. If you hadn't given us money, you would have waited to eat these with us today. Orgrim shook his head helplessly, then stretched out his hand to push the plate in front of Nami and Nakajeo, and said, no matter how hard it is, you can't hurt the children. Eat, you too. Uncle Orgrim, will eat some vegetarian food today to relieve my appetite. After saying that, Ariam didn't talk nonsense. He picked up the plates of the two little Lolita Nami and Nakajeo, brought them over directly, and started eating by himself. Nami and Nakajeo were still eating at this time. It was a little Lolita, so of course she was not polite. The two cheered and started eating the meat happily. On the other hand, Belmir looked at Orgrim in surprise, and then muttered, "If this is really your nature, you shouldn't be a pirate." Orgrim said while eating the food, "That's because you are not my enemy. You can't see me when I am cruel." "Why did you become a pirate?" Belmir suddenly asked. "Free?" Orgrim responded somewhat funnily. "Don't discuss my problem, let's talk about you. After all, you are also a manor owner with a manor. Logically speaking, you shouldn't have gotten to this point. Why are you so poor? Will there be pirates coming to harass you often?" Orgrim asked. Belmir was stunned for a moment, and then she lowered her head and started eating the food, as if she didn't want to answer such a question. Orgrim looked at her thoughtfully. She didn't ask any more questions. Just like that, she was eating quietly. Belmir raised her head from time to time and looked at the expressions of Nami and Nakajeo, who were extremely happy because they had eaten meat. She suddenly felt a little bit in her heart. Depression and bitterness. "Because of the Navy," Belmir suddenly said. "Navy?" Orgrim smiled in a funny way. "Yes, it is really funny and ironic to say that the East China Sea is the world-famous sea of peace. In fact, there are not many pirates here. On the contrary, the Navy is very powerful here. Originally, this place was supposed to be a quiet and peaceful little village protected by justice. If this was really the case, I think our lives would be much better," Belmir said softly. "Then you discover that the Navy is not the kind of righteous force that protects the people of one party as you imagined, right?" "Gee ha 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 ha," Orgrim laughed. Belmir glanced at Orgrim, then nodded and said, "That's true. As a former Navy soldier, what I represent is not justice. The naval base that was supposed to protect the sea area is also so terrible. So, the reason why you are so poor is because you have to pay protection fees to the Navy on a regular basis, right?" Orgrim asked very calmly. He is used to this kind of thing. Whether it is pirates or the Navy, for most ordinary people, these two parties are actually exploiters. It's just that the Navy's methods are more gentle, while the pirates will kill the whole family at every turn. Of course, this is not the original intention of the high-ranking people. I think Sengoku and others will not support this kind of thing, but, even if they are the top brass of the Navy, they cannot really control all aspects of the Navy. To be honest but very cruel, in the eyes of big men like them, how can they tolerate such trivial nonsense? This is also reasonable. If the Navy bosses like warring states were busy dealing with these small problems all day long, the Navy would have been paralyzed long ago. In the town, every household has to pay money. The Navy's men have a group of pirates. If anyone disobeys, the pirates will attack there. You say, is this ridiculous? Belmir looked at Orgrim and asked. Gee ha 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 ha, you see me smiling so happily, isn't that enough to give you an answer? Orgrim laughed heartlessly. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 447. Belmul glared at Orgrim angrily. Then she gritted her teeth and said, sure enough, talking about these issues to a pirate like you is just humiliating yourself. Gee ha 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 ha, who says it's not? Orgrim said without caring at all. Then, the table became quiet again, with only Nami and Noki happily eating delicious food. After a long time, Orgrim filled the bowl he picked up the bowl of soup and drank it all in one gulp. Then he wiped his mouth happily and said, it's not bad. Belmir said sarcastically, is this how a big man like you feels after experiencing the suffering of the people? Gee ha 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 ha, I am indeed a big shot, Orgrim responded shamelessly, but then he continued, but when it comes to the suffering of the people, forget it, you in the East China Sea are worthy of it. Orgrim took out a cigar from his arms, and he was very casual. He lit it, and then he exhaled a puff of smoke and said with some emotion, "You just asked, why did I become a pirate?" Belmir's brows raised slightly, as if he was not interested in Orgrim. "I'm also very interested in the past of the big shot. Even if he is a pirate, a legend is a legend after all. I was born in Ogulin, North Sea, a little-known town, probably similar to here. My family has been whalers for generations. When I was very young, I can't remember the specific time. In short, my parents and Baker Man's parents went out to sea to hunt whales, and never came back since. I don't know if they were buried in the whale's mouth, or encountered some kind of shipwreck, or maybe they were pirates and so on. There is no way to study these." Orgrim spoke softly. Having said this, he glanced at Nami and Nakajeo again, smiled and said, "If I remember correctly, we should be as old as these two little girls at that time, right? What's even worse is that Baker and Imandu also has a younger sister, Karanda Neiman. That little kid doesn't know anything, can't do anything, and is just a dragster. You said, we three little brats, in a world like that, have no friends. How to survive? Adoption?" Belmir hesitated and asked. "Gee ha 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 ha, how can there be so many kind-hearted people like you in this world? Do you know what our town is like? Do you know what's going on in the North Sea? Before the Great Pirate Age began, perhaps the New World and the Grand Line were very chaotic, but among the four sea areas, the North Sea was definitely the most evil. Even now, it is probably the same, right? There aren't many people in this town who have enough to eat at home, let alone adopt us three brothers and sisters. As for the nobles, they are all oily, but do we expect them to be kind? I might as well count on pirates." Orgrim laughed and said. Belmir was silent for a while, and then she asked, "Then how did you survive?" "Survive? Yes, surviving is a big problem," Orgrim murmured softly. There was a bit of disgust in his eyes, and his tone became sad. "My physique is the foundation for our three brothers and sisters to settle down and live a happy life. My physique has been different from ordinary people since I was a child. I have never been sick or injured, and I can recover in 3 or 2 days. What can the little guy do? Cheating. Stealing, robbing, and cheating, what haven't I done? For what? In order to survive, I have missed countless times, and every time I was beaten so hard that I couldn't move. Maybe they all thought that a little guy like me would be dead if I suffered such injuries, so they didn't want to get dirty. Hand. In short, I am lucky enough to survive every time, and so on again and again." Orgrim smiled. Belmir seemed not to have thought that a big man like Orgrim could have such a tragic past. He originally thought that Orgrim should be like that. From the very beginning, he was a man of extraordinary talent and infinite glory. Enough? Enough to support you three brothers and sisters, Belmir couldn't help but ask. Gee ha 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 ha. It is the greatest luck to barely keep my younger brothers and sisters from starving to death, Orgrim laughed and said, with a hint of ridicule in his tone. How about you, what would you do? How did you survive? Belmir asked again. Me, as you have said, I am gifted. This is what allows us three brothers and sisters to settle down and live in peace. As the eldest brother, when Orgrim said this, he paused for a moment, then exhaled a puff of smoke, with a helpless smile on his lips, and continued, there is a disease on the roadside. Have you eaten the dead wild dogs? Have you let them go? Have you ever eaten fruits that have been covered with mold for too long? There are rotten leftovers in the trash can at the back door of the small restaurant. Have you tried it? Belmer looked at Orgrim with an unbelievable look in his eyes, and was speechless for a moment. Yes, I have eaten it, even more disgusting things than this. I have also eaten it. There is nothing to be ashamed of. I even feel proud of it. After all, it is precisely because I can eat these things, and it is precisely because my physique allows me to eat them. After these damn things are unleashed, my brother Beckman and my sister Neiman can survive in this damn world. More people like us, they can't even survive. No. It's the North Sea, it's Ogulin, Orgrim said with a cruel smile on his lips. At this moment, it seemed that Nami and Nakajayo were also quietly listening to Orgrim's stories. With those thrilling adventure stories it's different. This story is about darkness and sadness. But the three of them, mother and daughter, all listened very seriously. It is with this physique that we three brothers and sisters survived and passed the most difficult time. Just like wild beasts, cubs are the weakest, and the same is true for humans. When we grow up a little, life will be better. A lot. At least we could work hard and go to the port to carry bags and unload cargo. Slowly, we got a boat. With some things recorded by our parents, we learned to fish and whale, and became ordinary fishermen. Although you still have to endure all kinds of exploitation, you can still get by. During that time, everyone felt very prosperous, right? You have to get up early every day and have to be busy. Why? For a bite of food. Then we got a little bigger. Orgrim whispered softly. He took a sip from the teacup on the table and moistened his throat before continuing. There are always people who want to ride on the heads of our three brothers and sisters and eat us flesh, drink our blood. But I have grown up a lot. Although I was only 12 years old, I remember very clearly that at that time, I was no longer smaller than any adult in the town. That day, the gangsters in the town came to arrest my sister, Neiman, to work as a dancer in the pub. You should know what that means. It was also that day that I used a harpoon to kill 26 people in one night. I thought there would be some difficulties, but they are all rubbish that bullies the weak and fears the strong. That was my first time killing someone. In the stories, they always say how disgusting it will be after killing someone for the first time. You will vomit out all the food in your stomach, and you won't be able to sleep at night. It's all fucking bullshit. It's just killing people. What kind of hell is this? Not being able to survive is the real hell. I killed so many people. At dawn, I just went to the beach to wash away the smell of blood on my body, and then went directly to the fish market to sell fish. Who the hell has the mood and aftertaste to feel sad for spring and sad for autumn? Feel what it's like to kill someone? If I don't work today, and if my younger brother and sister don't work, the two of them will have to go back to eat black bread that is harder than bricks, and I will have to go to the smelly ditch on the roadside to find a dead dog that died of illness and cook it. You said, if it were you, would you be in the mood to lament these dead people? Orgrim asked with a ferocious aura in his eyes. Belle Emil didn't know how to answer Orgrim. She had never experienced such cruelty, and she didn't know how to say those great truths. But just because I killed someone, no one dared to bully me in Ogulin. From that time on, I finally understood the truth. If I don't want others to sit on our three brothers and sisters and eat meat and drink blood, then I will just sit on other people's heads and eat meat and drink blood. This damn world is a world where individuals cannibalize people. There is no reason to argue. With this bloody reputation, I joined the town's guard. Within 2 years, I sat in the position of guard captain. In this town, I can be regarded as a master. I am not a good person. I accept both black and white. Those oily gangsters in the town, when they see me, they will call me Master Chewy and respectfully give us 30% of the benefits. The merchants at the port must pay me properly when they see me, otherwise I will make it impossible for him to get off the ship. But let me tell you, they can't live without me. Why? Just because I can fight. When the pirates come, I dare to rush to the front line. It is precisely because of me that the town of Ogulin has not been attacked by pirates in 3 years, and those nobles do not dare to attack it. I have no disrespect. The essence of this world was laid out in front of me when I was young. 4 words, the strong is king, Orgrim said with a ferocious expression. When he said this, the majestic momentum on his body was slightly agitated, but the three of Belmere did not feel any discomfort. But not long after the good times, a group of slave traders came to the island and snatched Niemann away without my noticing. Orgrim suddenly relaxed his tone and said. Since then, Beckman and I's hearts were no longer in the town. When we ate or drank, we always felt that something was missing, but the sea is dangerous and turbulent. Our parents both died on the sea, so we never made up our minds to go to sea, and we didn't know in what capacity we should go to sea. Until later, I killed a bounty pirates with 29 million Baileys, and you damn navy want to covet my money, drink my blood, and eat my flesh. Then I must smash the pot for you and make everyone lose their money. Have to eat? So I killed all the bastard nobles who colluded with the navy overnight, took the subordinates who were willing to follow me, and went to sea. I raised the pirate flag and wanted to conquer the sea. Find my sister. This is my story before I went to sea and became a pirate. Does it sound good? Orgrim looked at Belmere and asked. Belmere was shocked. After a long time, she asked, is that why you became a pirate? Gee ha 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 ha, don't get me wrong, this is not a reason, it's just a pretext. To become a pirate or something, you don't need a reason. The same is true for people. If you need a reason to do anything, then that's it. Damn it, I went to sea just because I wanted to be a free pirate and no longer bound by the rules of the world, so I became a pirate. It's so boring and simple. Kill people with me, do this with me. Encounter, it doesn't matter much. Orgrim laughed and said. Although Orgrim said it easily, Belmul felt very heavy in his heart. This man did not mean to whitewash himself. He spread out many stories. He told it, truthfully, and bloody. There was not a single good person in his story. The 3 brothers and sisters, who cheated, kidnapped, killed, and set fires, were certainly not good people. And those who died in his hands were not good people either. What a good guy. In the world of the 3 brothers and sisters, there seems to be no definition of good guys and bad guys at all. Anyone who stands in front of them can be killed. For what? To live. To live a better life. Although Orgrim said, he became a pirate because he liked pirates. He was not forced by life or anything. But Bel Emil didn't think so. At this time, she suddenly felt that it was not Orgrim who was wrong, but this damn world. But soon, she gave up this idea. It was Orgrim who was at fault, but he had no regrets and accepted everything calmly, and that was all. Big guys, please give me flowers and monthly tickets. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 448. After all the food was finished, Orgrim was still sitting on the sofa like an old man, holding a teacup in his hand, drinking tea and enjoying this leisurely time. Nami and Nakajayo both went to help Belmere wash the dishes and clean up. I don't know if it's an illusion, but I always feel that the atmosphere has changed at this time. Belmere seemed to no longer regard Orgrim simply as a pirate. Although he still didn't recognize Orgrim as a person, Belmere felt that Orgrim was not like the pirates he had come into contact with. But I want to say something different, but I can't. At this moment, the alarm bell rang in Cocoa West Village. Belmere, who was washing the dishes, suddenly changed his expression. He dropped the dishes in his hands, wiped his hands hurriedly, ran to the back room, and took out his own knife with a navy number rifle. What's wrong? Orgrim raised his eyebrows and asked. The alarm bell means that an enemy is coming, maybe a pirate or a mountain bandit, Belmar said directly. Hee, there are still bandits on your little broken island. Orgrim asked in a funny tone. Belma looked at Orgrim with a look of contempt and said, at least in the East China Sea, sometimes bandits will take boats. Orgrim was confused, and the bandit took the boat. Isn't that a pirate? Just then, a man in a security officer uniform with a windmill on his head ran into the yard. The first time he saw Orgrim sitting in the room, there was a hint of disgust in his eyes. Aegean, the security officer of Kokoyasi village, is also the only security officer in this small village. Although he has never spoken, there is no doubt that Aegean likes Belmir. And Orgrim moved in here. Although Orgrim had no interest in Belmir at all, Aegean always felt that he was being cheated. This is really a sad story, so when Aegean looked at Orgrim, his eyes were naturally filled with disgust. However, he knew that he could not resist Orgrim, and he also knew that Belmir had a strong personality and could not really succumb to Orgrim. Everything is just your own fantasy. So it was just disgust, nothing extreme. As for Orgrim's words, he has no interest in the opinions of a small person like him. There are many people in this world who hate me and wish for my death, and you are not the least of them. Are you going to kill me? Thoughts are free, and Orgrim never cares about them. As long as you don't put your thoughts into action or do anything that really pisses me off, it doesn't matter. If you control heaven and earth, how can you control what other people are thinking? Aegean, what happened? Belmir asked. It's a pirate, hanging a pirate flag with a big red nose, and he's heading towards our port. It won't be long before he arrives. I checked, and it's the clown BA, who has a bounty of 12 million Baileys. Gee, it is said that this guy is very cruel and will use cannonballs to destroy all the plundered towns, Aegean said quickly. Bucky. Orgrim was stunned for a moment, and then he felt a little funny. Shanks had been looking for him in the East China Sea for so long and couldn't find a single hair on him. Not long after he came to Donghai, this boy took the initiative to bump into him. This guy Bucky, even though he is a little funny, in fact, he is also a truly evil pirate. He can make himself feel unhappy because of some trivial things, and just use his characteristic Bucky bomb to destroy the town. Many innocent people died in his hands. But Orgrim will not have any objections to Bucky because of this, because compared to himself, Bucky is just a younger brother. If he didn't come to Coco West Village, Orgrim would not care about this kind of thing. But now, I am still sitting here more or less. Weak chickens like Belmir and others probably can't beat Bucky. After all, although this kid is not good at it, he has followed Roger in and out of the Grand Line and the New World. People. Don't worry, I will protect everyone. Belmar said without hesitation, and then pulled the gun bolt to load the bullet. Nami and Nakajao looked at Belmar with some worry, and called out, Belmar. They're just a bunch of little pirates, don't worry. Belmir comforted the two little guys with a forced smile. Nami was a clever little girl. She suddenly thought of Orgrim and ran to Orgrim's side with her short legs. He hugged Orgrim's leg and said pitifully, Orgrim, aren't you a very powerful pirate? If you help us, everyone will be safe. Orgrim couldn't help but smile, reached out and rubbed Nami's head, and said, you also know that I am a pirate. As a pirate, how can I do good things? Unless it is beneficial. What is the benefit? Otherwise, I'll go with you. Nami thought for a moment, then spoke as if she was risking her life. Gee, ha 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 ha, I am indeed despicable, but I am not so despicable that I would use such a thing to bully a child, Orgrim laughed. Then, before Nami could speak, he looked at Belmir and said, isn't it hard to pay protection money to the Navy? So, how about paying protection money to pirates? Don't forget, I was also a security officer. Woolen cloth, very good at this kind of thing. If she hadn't heard Orgrim's story, Belmir had no good feelings towards Orgrim at all and would never have agreed to him. But at this time, Orgrim's words made her a little moved. On the one hand, she really didn't want to face the navy that she had served in the past and now wanted to suck their blood, and pay protection fees to those damn bastards. On the other hand, it was because of Orgrim's reputation, far more deterrent than the navy in the East China Sea. These navies can't control the Bucky pirates who came to attack this time. But if Orgrim's flag is hung here, the entire East China Sea will probably be destroyed. Anyone dares to mess with him. Of course, Orgrim's influence cannot be that powerful in the East China Sea, but there is still no problem in protecting a small town in a remote country. Whether it is the world government or the navy, they will give it to him in some way. The prerequisite for this face is that he doesn't act recklessly here. "What would you like?" Bellmeyer asked in a deep voice. "Your oranges are delicious. I hope I can still eat them often when I return to the New World." Orgrim smiled and said. "Okay, it's a deal," Bellmeyer said without hesitation. "Bellmeyer, he is a pirate," Aegean couldn't help but try to dissuade him. "I know, but everyone's safety is more important. I don't want anyone to die anymore." Bellmeyer looked at Aegean with firm eyes and said. At the same time, Orgrim reached into his pocket and dug it out. This time he came out without any flags. What's more, he seems a bit retarded when he goes out and runs around with his own flag. He casually took out a handkerchief with the Warhammer Pirates logo embroidered on it. "There are many of these sold in Avalon. It's nothing special. It's just an ordinary handkerchief that you usually wear to wipe your hands. This handkerchief still has some oil stains on it." Orgrim was not embarrassed, threw the handkerchief to Bellmeyer, and said, "Go and use this as evidence to tell Bucky that this is my territory and ask him to come to the island to meet me." Bellmeyer thought Orgrim would go with her, but Orgrim threw a handkerchief to her. "It's not that she doubts your Orgrim's reputation, it's mainly that she's worried that the pirates don't believe it, so what if they just kill people? Even if Orgrim can stop it by then, the village will suffer irreparable losses." Seemingly seeing Bellmeyer's hesitation and worry, Orgrim smiled and said, "Don't worry, go ahead, that guy Bucky, I know who he is a smart man and will not mess up." Coming. Seeing that Orgrim had said this, Bell-Emil didn't dwell on anything anymore. He looked at Orgrim and said, "Nami and Nakajao, I'll leave it to you for now. Gee ha 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 ha, don't worry, with me here, even if the naval marshal from the Warring States period comes, don't let these two little guys get hurt." Orgrim laughed. "A naval marshal would never do such a thing," Bellmeyer retorted, and then she didn't dare to delay anything, and quickly left with Takeru. At the same time, the Bakey pirates' ship was slowly approaching the port of Cocoa West Village. At this time, Bakey, I'm very heartbroken. According to rumors, the Uncle Kazgarot Orgrim is on this island. The closer I get to this island, the more I'm looking for death. By then, if that uncle really doesn't remember yourself, Aaron, the fishman tribe next to you, can't you chop him into pieces? Even though I am a split fruit user, well. But there was nowhere to run. Suppressing the anxiety in his heart, Bucky and others finally entered the port. Aaron was the first to jump off the boat, and then Bucky followed him obediently. At this time, at the port, Bellmeyer and Aegean, together with a group of villagers, were holding some messy weapons, such as hoes and harpoons, and were looking at them seriously. "Don't get me wrong, we're not here to rob," Bucky said quickly. But before he finished speaking, Bellmeyer raised the oil-stained handkerchief of Orgrim in his hand and said, "Let me tell you, Cocoa West Village is the territory of the Warhammer pirates. The king of the night, Kazgarot's Orgrim, is on the island, and everyone and everything here is protected by him. If you are his enemy, you will not survive even if you run to the ends of the earth. Although I feel a little awkward in my heart, I am a former Navy soldier." Here holding up the pirate's token and saying this. "But I don't know why, but I feel full of security. Not to mention, this feeling is really good. A bit over the top. As soon as Belmere finished speaking, the Buckies were stunned. Aaron, on the other hand, looked excited. He knew that it was a handkerchief sold only in Avalon, and what was embroidered on it was the logo of the Warhammer Pirates. Combined with the previous news, there is a high probability that Mr. Chewie is really on the island. He happily said, "Has Mr. Hammer already designated this place as the territory of the Warhammer Pirates?" "That's right, so don't mess around." Belmire looked at Aaron's weird body and said nervously. "Ha ha ha ha, don't get me wrong, we are here to see Mr. Chewie. My name is Aaron, and I was also a member of Avalon before. I heard that Mr. Chewie is here, so I made a special trip to visit Mr. Chewie. Since Mr. Chewie has this place is designated as the territory of the Warhammer Pirates. If anyone dares to act recklessly here, I, Aaron, will be the first to chop off his head," Aaron said excitedly. Belmere was a little surprised. "Didn't it say it was the Bucky Pirates? Which one of you is in charge?" But she didn't ask any more questions and said, "Bucky, Ogre Mew wants you to go to the island to meet him." After Bucky heard this, not only was he not frightened, but he was so happy that he almost jumped up. "Did you see that? Have you seen? Let me just say, I, Bucky, have some friendship with that big shot." Aaron was really surprised. He didn't expect that this little pirate from the East China Sea was really related to Master Chewie. "Fortunately, I didn't kill him easily." Yes, I'll go right away," Bucky said excitedly. "If Orgrim doesn't see him, he will die. And if he goes to see Orgrim now, although he doesn't know what the situation is, there is a high probability that he will not die. He must have some winks. That's it. When the time passes, I want to lick that uncle until he feels comfortable." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. A Sledgehammer Breaks into Pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 449. Aaron claimed to be one of his own, and Bucky was the one Orgrim wanted to see. Belmere did not hesitate. With Orgrim here, they should not be able to cause any trouble, so he quickly brought the two people to his home. But when he stepped into the courtyard, Belmere felt a little strange. "I'm obviously a former Navy soldier who hates pirates, why is it like this for no reason? As if I was some of Orgrim's subordinates?" Although he felt a little strange in his heart, he didn't have time to think too much at this time, so Belmire walked in. Aaron and Bucky both followed behind her. At this time, neither of them was sure what the relationship between this woman and Master Chewie was. But since Mr. Chewie lives in her house, he must still be very close, right? So I didn't dare to do anything to Belmere, and my attitude was very kind. Bucky felt a little uneasy. But Aaron is very excited. He is finally going to meet Lord Hammer. Whether he has the chance to return to the Warhammer Pirates and Avalon in the future depends on this time. When they arrived at the door of the house, the door was still open, and the three of them could already hear the sounds inside. Aaron was very excited, and he knew from the sound that Mr. Chewie hadn't run away. Sure enough, as soon as he entered the door, he saw the figure of Orgrim. At this time, the big boss was sitting on the sofa, with a very kind expression and a smile on his lips, and two little Lolita were surrounding him. Nami, a little girl, climbed onto Orgrim's shoulders again at some point. She held Orgrim's head with one hand and raised the other hand, shouting excitedly, "Go, kill those Navy." Najajeo took advantage of the situation and lay in Orgrim's arms, pretending to be seriously injured, and said intermittently, I am the captain of the Navy, Nachko, how could you lose?" Belmere was shocked. "What happened to my two daughters? Are you beating the Navy to death? I used to be a Navy, are you two trying to beat me to death? You traitor." Fortunately, though, Belmere, now I am still quite repulsive towards pirates, but I don't have a good impression of the Navy either. I didn't say much, but I secretly felt that I had to find a chance to drive Orgrim away. This guy is too charming. Now, even he has been affected by him. If he continues to stay, maybe Nami and Noki will grow up and really want to become female pirates? Aaron was dumbfounded at this time. Is this still the king of Avalon? The big guy who stomps his feet and makes the whole sea tremble? Is he actually here, playing with two little girls? He looks quite happy. Bucky is also completely confused. Well, he imagined that when he came to see Orgrim at this time, Orgrim should be sitting on the sofa, with a big horse and a golden sword, and a majestic momentum, waiting for him to come to visit. After all, in his impression, this is what that domineering and mighty Orgrim, the figure who chased Captain Roger on the empty island. The result, that's it. Just when Bucky felt something was wrong, Orgrim glanced here casually. The gaze just glanced at him, and Bucky shuddered all over. Yes, no matter how funny and strange Hosgarot Orgrim's style is, he is one of the kings of the sea after all. One of the best men in the world. He no longer needs to use those deliberate gestures to pretend to be majestic. There is no need to use these means to protect one's face. He was just playing with two little girls, and let one of the little girls crawl on his head, but what could he do? Will anything change? No, he is still the king of the night who can plunge the whole world into chaos with just one order. Who dares to underestimate him because of his performance? No. Bucky no longer dared to think about anything else in his heart. Khazgaro's Orgrim was still the domineering Orgrim, but he no longer had the same sharpness as before. But this kind of terror hidden under the gentleness made Bucky feel even more horrified. Orgrim glanced at Bucky first. Well, this kid is right. That big red nose is his symbol. He hasn't changed at all. He is just a little more mature than when he was on Roger's ship. Then, his eyes fell on Aaron with some surprise. Huh? Aaron. Why are you here? Orgrim asked curiously. Although Aaron was just a nobody in his eyes, he would not turn a blind eye when people were here. At the same time, Aaron's appearance also made Orgrim made some arrangements in his mind. Sure enough, Master Chui still remembered me. Aaron was very excited. Then, he quickly said, I just came to the East China Sea not long ago, and I happened to hear that Master Chui is here, so come take a look and see if there is anything you need my help with running errands and getting started. What? Gee ha 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 ha, you are really thoughtful. I heard that you were pardoned from Imperial City by Jinbi, right? How? Not back to the Sun Pirates, Orgrim smiled and asked. Aaron was so moved that Orgrim knew his experience and almost cried. What a big man Orgrim was. He could still miss him despite his busy schedule. Matter? Mr. Sui, you are worried about me. I was indeed rescued by Jinbei. However, I still have no plans to join the Seven Seas of the King, so, after such a shameful incident, I feel too embarrassed to go back to Avalon, so I plan to go out for a walk first, and then I will be shameless and beg Sister Sphinx for help. Let's see if she can arrange a way out for me or something. Aaron didn't hide anything, he told Orgrim. Gee ha 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 ha, what is such a shameful thing? What are you sorry for? It's like we are driving you away. If you want to go back, you can go back at any time, Orgrim laughed and said. Wasn't it just that he was beaten down by the Navy once? What is there to be ashamed of? I, Orgrim, was beaten down by those bastards in the Navy many times, so what? Like that? He is a real hero if he can stand up. Aaron was a little moved in his heart. Mr. Chui has a lot of people, so he naturally doesn't care about his little 99, but in his heart, how can he get along? He was the one who wanted to leave Avalon in the first place, and now he is messing around. What a tragedy. He is the one who wants to go back. Is his face so big? Seemingly seeing Aaron's embarrassment, Orgrim smiled and said, Okay, since you want to find a job, I will make an arrangement for you. Please handle this matter for me, and then you can return to Avalon in great glory. If anyone dares to gossip about you, I will support you." As soon as Orgrim finished speaking, Aaron immediately knelt on the ground on one knee and said, "Master Hammer, tell me, Aaron, I will go up the mountain of swords and go down into the sea of fire. You can pull me down. I need you to go to hell." In this way, these two little guys, one is named Nami and the other is named Nakajeo. The woman is Belmir. I have some friendship with Nami's elders, but I didn't want to go back to the New World with me, so I designated this place as the territory of my Warhammer pirates. I remember, you always wanted to join the Warhammer pirates, right? I will give you a chance this time. You stay here well and protect this place. You can use the flag of my Warhammer pirates as you wish. Just don't cause trouble for me. When these two little guys grow up, I have my own arrangements. When the time comes, you will go back to Avalon with me and become a leader of my Warhammer pirates. However, I have already told you the words first. I am afraid it will take a few years. You stay. Can you live there?" Orgrim grinned, looked at Aaron and asked. Aaron hadn't spoken yet. After hearing Orgrim's words, Bel Emil panicked. Sure enough, this guy still won't give up. But she didn't dare to speak at this time. Orgrim's momentum was too strong. When he spoke to his subordinates, his tone was based on discussion, but for some reason, there was such an irrefutable momentum. Is this his true face? In fact, Orgrim is really like this. When he talks to little people like Aaron, his tone will be very calm with a sense of discussion. But this kind of discussion, it's the kind of discussion where I finish what I've said, and if you have anything to add, you can quickly add it to me instead of asking you to come and raise objections with me. To put it simply, it's overbearing. I speak and you can only add something. Can't object. Aaron didn't seem to think there was anything wrong at all, and said without hesitation, "No problem, I promise to complete the things you told me, Master Chui. As long as I, Aaron, am still alive, I will never let anyone hurt me." To Belmir, Miss Nami, Miss Najiko. Orgrim nodded and said, "Very good, then I'll leave it to you." After that, he ignored Aaron. Instead, he looked at Bucky in a funny way and asked, "We haven't seen each other for so many years, why are you still hanging around here? That guy Shanks is going to the New World to challenge me. Are you still planning to become a pirate here? Are you motivated? Why are you hanging out with Aaron?" As soon as Bucky heard this, he felt calm. Sure enough, this big guy really remembered me, and judging from his tone, there was no disgust or impatience. I saw a flattering smile on Bucky's face. Said Master Zui, "That Shanks guy wants to challenge you, but I have not participated in it. I still know myself. As for Aaron, it was just a coincidence. I heard that you were here, so I was planning to come and pay a visit. But I met Brother Aaron on the way, and we came together. It's good to have someone to take care of you." "Gee, ha 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 ha, you are still so naughty," Orgrim laughed and said. Bucky also laughed with him, not daring to have any objections. Aaron was really surprised at this time. From the tone of his voice, it seemed that Bucky had a big background. Mr. Chui was talking and laughing. "Orgrim, his nose is so strange. Do you know him? It's like you two are familiar with each other." Nami sat on Orgrim's shoulder and asked curiously. Orgrim smiled and said, "Don't underestimate this kid, ha 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 ha, the bounty is 12 million belly. The navy is also true, blind, this guy Bucky, although he has been hanging out in the East China Sea, he can be regarded as my contemporaneity. In the past, this guy often opposed me. He is a member of the Roger Pirates. Don't be serious. Treat him like a nobody." Orgrim's words were a bit flattering to Bucky, but he thought it was quite interesting, so he said it like this. Bucky said he was self-aware, but in fact, this guy was just a giveaway. Color, only those who dare to open a dyeing workshop. When Orgrim opened his mouth and praised him, his whole body floated away, and he still had to act like I don't dare to take it seriously. Belmar and Aaron were stunned. Especially Aaron, he thought to himself that this guy is too old. Are he on the ship of Pirate King Roger? At the same time as Master Chui? Did you often go against Mr. Chui in the past? So how powerful must he be? Are you pretending to be for me along the way? Belmere was also surprised. Of course she had heard of the Bucky pirates in the East China Sea. They were a very cunning pirate group, and the Navy failed to catch them several times. But I never expected that this seemingly incompetent clown would actually be a member of the Roger Pirates. That is really a living legend. Dong Hai, is there such a big boss? And judging from his respectful attitude towards Orgrim, it seems that Orgrim is more powerful than he expected. Anyway, I came here, and it was fate that we met today. That bastard Shanks was looking for you in the East China Sea, and wanted to invite you to come out. But since you are unwilling to go out, I won't meddle in your own business, but I've explained everything to you clearly about this place. You, Bucky, will take care of it from now on, you know? Orgrim said. Bucky nodded quickly and said, no problem, don't worry, Mr. Hammer. At the same time, he was also thinking in his mind, this can be regarded as my uncle having some relationship with the Warhammer pirates, right? Then in the East China Sea, wouldn't he walk sideways? Ha 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 ha, this uncle is indeed the son of destiny. A sledgehammer breaks into pirates. Author, Zippo. Chapter 450. Admiralty Marineford. In Marshal Sengoku's office, the big boss Sengoku was communicating with a naval colonel. In other words, that guy Orgrim found himself a territory in the East China Sea? Is there anything special? That place, Marshal Warring States asked. The naval captain shook his head and said no, Marshal, it is just an ordinary small island with a village on it called Cocoa West Village, it seems there is no more. There is none left, Warring States raised his eyebrows. There is nothing on this island. Orgrim went to grab a piece of land? What's wrong with this? This is the East China Sea, the Sea of Peace. Orgrim doesn't understand the meaning of this. He held his hand. What do you think after reaching the East China Sea? Is the new world not big enough? Isn't it enough for him to play in? What does he want the people on the island to give him in exchange for shelter? This may be a breakthrough, the Warring States Marshal asked. The naval colonel looked a little embarrassed and said, Marshal, it seems to be nothing, just oranges. Orgrim said that he liked the oranges there very much, so he asked the Kokoyasi village to pay the protection fee, which is oranges. Tangerine? Can these oranges be transported to the New World? Everyone in the Warring States period was stunned. I don't know about this. Theoretically speaking, it's unlikely because it will break, the naval colonel quickly explained. The Warring States Marshal nodded, but he was still a little strange. At this moment, the naval colonel said, however, I heard rumors that some friend of Orgrim's used to die, and then that friend's child was adopted by people there, so Orgrim paid attention to it. He has a fart friend in the East China Sea, the Warring States Marshal cursed without hesitation. But after thinking about it, he felt that this was not necessarily impossible. Who knows what kind of connections Orgrim has? The Navy doesn't have the ability to investigate all of this. It became clear. After all, the Warring States Marshal shook his head and said, since it's just oranges, forget it and leave them alone. If Orgrim wants a small village, just give it to him. Although in East China Sea, but as long as they don't cause trouble, just treat it as if it doesn't exist, and don't destroy the hard-won peace in the East China Sea. It's just as Orgrim expected. After all, it's just a small broken island. It has nothing but an orange which is quite delicious. I don't plan to make any tricks or make big news here. I think the Navy you should give yourself a pat on the back here. Sure enough, after the Warring States Marshal determined that there was no value there, he stopped caring about it. As long as you Orgrim don't do anything and don't poke a hole in the sky, then let's pretend we don't know. Yes, Marshal, the Navy captain responded quickly. That redhead has entered a new world, right? Marshal Warring States asked. Yes, Marshal, we have just entered the new world. Do we need to keep an eye on them? Asked the Navy captain. Well, keep an eye on it. Although it is a cooperative relationship, the red-haired man is not a simple person. I guess, now that Orgrim is not in the new world, this guy might do something, the Warring States Marshal thought for a while and said. His agreement with Shanks was to continue to use Orgrim's banner and pretend to mess with him. This will lower the vigilance of the other big pirates. Even if the operation is done well, that woman Charlotte Lingling may provide some convenience to Shanks. After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend. If we can really reach a certain level of trust with Charlotte Lingling, it will be easier for Shanks to be ruthless in the future. But these are all laid out slowly. Shanks has now entered the new world, and Orgrim happens to be not in the new world. It may still be possible for him to use this to do something. For example, challenge the Warhammer pirates? Test the waters a little? As of now, the only people in the Warhammer pirates who can really compete with Shanks are Ben Beckman, Mihawk, and Douglas Barrett. No matter who among them acts or reacts, they will all represent the will of the Warhammer pirates. When the time comes, won't it be better to confirm the rumors that Shanks is planning to join the Warhammer pirates? But here, you need to have some restraint, don't really anger the Warhammer pirates and crush this kid to death. Then wouldn't my investment be in vain? But come to think of it, that guy Shanks must still be a little worried. After arranging these things, the Warring States Marshal waved his hand and let the naval colonel go down. At this time, he lowered his head and looked at the documents on the table. It was issued by the world government not long ago, requiring the Navy headquarters to cooperate with a newly established company to build a sea train. The track of the sea train will be laid directly from the capital of Seven Waters to Marijoa. On the way, we will pass by Judiciary Island. This road is already open, so next, we need to connect the Navy headquarters Marineford and the Chambord Islands. The completion of this road is also of great significance to the world government. On the one hand, it has tested the actual effect of the sea train. On the other hand, by connecting several important institutions of the world government, administrative efficiency will also be improved. It's a test of the waters. Warring States' helplessness at this time was that he knew very well what the hell this newly established sea train project company was. This is a joint venture between the world government and the pirate Orgrim. Okay, now, the company run by the pirates wants to build a train to their Navy headquarters, Marineford. It's strange that Zenguo feels better. Although he knows that this is a good thing for the Navy, it just feels uncomfortable. But the matter has come to this, the above has given accurate words, and he, the Warring States period, has no choice but to comply. At the same time, in the East China Sea, near the sea area of Coco West Village, a leading ship is sailing towards the port here. On board this ship was none other than Dalag. He made an appointment with Orgrim to meet in the East China Sea. When Orgrim came, the result was better. After arriving, there was no news at all. I just heard that he was making a few random waves in the East China Sea, but he would not contact me. This made Dalag feel a little uncomfortable. Brother, my revolutionary army is no match for your Warhammer pirates. We have a big family and a big business, but you, the captain, can run around outside. I have a lot of things on my hands. After I finish my work here in Donghai, I have to go back to the headquarters in New World, okay? Can you please hurry up? But after waiting and waiting, there was no news from Orgrim. In the end, Durag couldn't stand it anymore. If you don't come, why don't I come? So Dalag came to Kokoyasi village. He wanted to see what the bastard Orgrim was doing hiding here. At this time, Koko West village has been captured by Orgrim. These villagers don't mind who is the boss over them, be it the navy or pirates. As long as their lives can get better, they can't control other things even if they want to, right? At the beginning, when Orgrim's pirate flag was hoisted, many people were very nervous, fearing that the navy would come and destroy their fellow pirates. But later it was discovered that the navy had no intention of paying attention to them. Then, I discovered that Orgrim didn't want anything good, just some oranges. Is this considered a thing? Our Kokoyasi village has nothing but plenty of oranges, so we need to take care of them. Without the exploitation of the navy and the protection of Orgrim, security and economy were all restored. The people in the village finally discovered that something was wrong. It seems that it is no big deal to take refuge in the pirates and accept their protection, right? On the contrary, the days are getting better and better. Why don't you care? Just leave it at that. In fact, Orgrim was ready to leave 2 days ago. He planned to go to Shiya village to meet the reclusive swordsman master Mr. Kaoshiro, and also to see Rorano Zoro. As for Guyuna, he is actually not very interested. He doesn't know whether this little loli is still alive or not, or whether she will die. After all, this was a small probability event. It happened that on that day, she went to get a knife at night and fell to death. And now that she has herself, if she happened to be reading the newspaper that day and didn't go, or even went at a different time, she might not die. This kind of thing is too uncertain. But just when Orgrim was about to leave and invited Durag to meet there, Dalag first called the phone bug and said that he would come to Kokoyasi village to visit him. Orgrim said it smoothly. He said that he learned from Mihawk that there was a reclusive swordsman in the East China Sea. As a result, Durag told him that Mr. Kaoshiro was an acquaintance of his. Unfortunately, Mr. Koshiro had a very bad opinion of Orgrim. The reason is quite simple. Kaoshiro is actually from Wano country. And what kind of disaster has Kaido caused to Wano country? The country is closed to the outside world, but the big guys are still a little bit obsessed with it. Koshiro and Durag are good friends, so they naturally have some channels and have been paying attention to the affairs of Wano country. He couldn't change anything, but he still had his attitude. Not only is Orgrim in alliance with Kaido, there is also a marriage relationship between the two. Kaido's daughter will marry Orgrim's son in the future. This is not a secret in the sea. As a person from the kingdom of Wano, Kaoshiro, even his Shigetsuki family, was once a daimyo of the kingdom of Wano. What do you think he can have a good attitude towards Orgrim? So when Orgrim heard this, he stopped going and loved so and so. When I go there, I might get angry and kill you with one hammer. Instead of that, wouldn't it be nice for me to play with Nami and Nakajayo for a few more days? When Durag came to the port, Eren was taking him with him. As for Bucky, this guy ran away a few days ago. Although Orgrim seems to have a good attitude towards him, how can I put it? Bucky felt very uneasy here, fearing that Orgrim would fall out one day and he wouldn't know how to die. So after staying for 2 days, I said goodbye to Orgrim. Orgrim didn't want to trouble him, so he happily sent him away. Following Eren, Durag walked all the way through the village, and found that the place was not destroyed by Orgrim. On the contrary, people seemed to be living happily, which made Dalag feel a little strange. What exactly is Orgrim looking at here? Instead of being taken to Belmir's home, he was taken to an orange manor. Not long after Durag walked in, he saw Orgrim's figure. His expression also became a little strange. Because Orgrim looked like he was doing farm work. At this moment, he was holding a pair of big scissors in his hand, pruning the branches of the orange tree under the command of 2 little Lolita. That's right, you can't let them grow too tall. That will make it inconvenient to pick oranges and will also affect the yield. So you need to prune them frequently to keep them at a certain height. Nami put her hands on her hips, looking like no one knows oranges better than me, and directed Orgrim. Nyakigao was on the side, eating oranges, and said it would be great if I could be as tall as you in the future. I can prune orange trees without a ladder. Gee ha 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 ha, when the time comes you won't think like this anymore, you will only think about how great it would be if you could become more beautiful. Orgrim laughed and said. At this moment, Nami discovered Durag and asked curiously, who are you? Orgrim heard the sound, turned around, smiled and said, long time no see, Durag. In my impression, he and Durag hadn't seen each other for many years, right? The last time was in Roger Town, the day Roger died. After that, Orgrim returned to the New World to stir up trouble, and Durag also began to form a revolutionary army. A smile appeared on Durag's face. He nodded to Nami first, then looked at Orgrim and said, really, if you don't become a pirate, but become an ordinary person, you will really have a great impact on the world. Contributed. Gee ha 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 ha, then don't you have to worry that you don't have enough arms. Orgrim said with a smile.